Discuss, evaluate, recommend. You can define these 3 words and you'd get them all right in a glossary. And that's not the strange part, because knowing them will not help. Writing the wrong verb doesn't feel wrong in the exam, but it does feel finished. Fluent, tidy, done, and that feeling exactly what stops you seeing you've answered a different question from the one which you were set. So, by the end of this mini lecture, 1 rule for each verb, not a definition. You already have those. A test, something you can run tonight on the very last answer that you write and catch the wrong verb yourself before anyone else does, such as the examiner. Okay, so 1 situation which we'll use for all 3 verbs. So a quick honest flag. Holden Ledger Group is invented by me. It's not a real company and it's not a past exam. I just built it specifically for this video. So nothing you see here is a prediction of anything. So the situation, and it's the only one that we need. A finance director's paper backs an acquisition on 18% membership growth. The target has never once beaten 6. In a market growing 5, that's the whole case. And 1 fact, because this is the video about 3 words, it's not about the modelling exercise. So hold on to it, because here's what most people will miss. All 3 verbs work on the same fact. So if the point you built on it is weak, it doesn't matter which verb you were set. All 3 answers are already sinking. All right, develop it more. Now watch what nearly everyone does with a point like that. They make it. The 18% isn't supported and move straight on. It's true, it's fair, and it's worth having exactly once. The mark they leave behind is in the move they never make. It's the so what. Push the point 1 step. The growth this deal is priced on is about 1/3 of the rate the paper's counting on. And the same observation is suddenly doing twice the work. So that step, the so what, is the single most common thing that strong candidates skip because they can't do it, or not because they can't do it, because the point left finished without it. So go through your last answers and find every sentence that ends on a fact, then force the next one to start with, which is the habit I'm trying to drill. All right, discuss. What does it ask? This is the one people are most sure they understand, and it's where good writers quietly bleed more marks. Because it looks like an invitation to make your case, and so they do it brilliantly one-sided. They build the argument, they win it, and they feel great walking away. But winning is the failure. Discuss never asked who's right. It asks you to hold 2 real sides up and weigh them, and the side you have to argue is the one that you don't believe. All right, discuss 2 sides. Listen to what held sounds like on the evidence actually presented. The assumption is not yet supportable, although it is not yet disproved either, and the cross-selling case is strong enough that it deserves to be tested rather than dismissed. So notice it never picks a winner, and notice the harder thing, it argues the side the writer probably doesn't buy. That the deal might still have legs, that's the sentence that earns, because that's the one most people can't make themselves when they write. Now, the one-sided version. This might feel stronger, but it will score lower. The assumption is unsupported. The targets never come close. The market's at 5. The paper does nothing to bridge the gap. It should be rejected. That is a good paragraph, and it is tight, it's evident, it's confident, and it's the wrong verb. It argued one side into the ground and never touched the other. The reason is as dangerous as it feels like a mistake. Because from the inside it feels like a strength. You are never going to make the opposing argument, so you never notice that it's missing. So the rule, here's the test, and you run it on 1 sentence only, which is your last one. Cover everything above it, read just that final line and ask yourself, did I weigh or did it land on one side? So weighing is discuss, landing is a different verb, and if yours landed, you've just found marks you were about to lose. Now evaluate what it asks. Everything discuss did, and then the step discuss refused to take. A conclusion, you weigh both sides exactly as before, and this time you come down. And here's the part people get wrong out of nerves. The conclusion is allowed to be conditional. It works only if this changes is a real conclusion. If it isn't, it's a hedge, so refusing to conclude at all is a hedge. Now, evaluate. On balance, the acquisition isn't proven at this price. The deal becomes acceptable only if the growth is rebased on a figure the target has actually achieved and the numbers still work at the first figure. So here, what the only if is doing, it doesn't dodge, it names the exact thing that would change the answer. That's a conclusion with its condition and show, and it earns everything the fence sitter leaves behind. Now evaluate good writing but wrong verb. So now the sharpest thing in the whole video, you've already heard these words. They were our strong discuss answer a minute ago, which I haven't changed in one of them. Same sentence, same fair weighting a minute ago. They earned under evaluate the very same words will fall short and nothing changed but the verb on the page. So sit with that because it's the thing nobody tells you. You can be a genuinely good writer and still drop marks you never see. The quality was never the problem. The match between the writing and the verb was. So, the evaluate test is one question and one sentence. Read your last line. Does it actually conclude or does it weigh? If it weighs beautifully and never lands, you didn't finish the verb. You stopped one move short of the marks. Recommend. What is it asking? This one gets failed by the answer that sounds the most grown up. Someone reads recommend, feels the weight of it, and reaches for something measured and senior sounding. A measured and senior 9 times out of 10 means committed to nothing. So recommend doesn't want your opinion of the situation, it wants the next move. Something a real person could actually pick up and do. Alright, recommend an action you can take. So rebase the paper to the target's own achieved growth rate of 6%, remodel the debt service at that figure, and put the revised number back to the board before any borrowing is committed. 3 things, and you could start every one of them on Monday morning. Notice it never says yes or no to the deal. It doesn't have to because recommend wanted the next step. Alright, recommend commits to nothing. The board should give careful consideration to the growth assumption before proceeding. So read it again and try to actually do it because you can't. Give careful consideration isn't a course of action. It's the sound of course of action and it's the most dangerous miss out of the 3. Because it feels responsible, it feels safe, it feels like exactly what a senior person would say. It just doesn't tell anyone to do anything. Alright, the rule. The test, and it's almost rude in how simple it is, so try to put your recommendation on a to-do list. If you can write it as a task someone could tick off, it's a recommendation. If you can't, you wrote a comment and called it one. 2 verbs, 1 task. Now the trap that's built into the paper on purpose. 1 task, 2 verbs, so discuss the assumption and recommend the way forward. You'll write the verb you're good at, and the moment it reads well, something in you says, all right, done. But it isn't, so half the marks were living in the second verb, and the strength of your first is exactly what talks you into walking away from them. Both verbs answered, so on the evidence presented, the assumption isn't yet supportable, though the cross-selling case is real enough to test rather than dismiss. On that basis, rebase the paper to the target achieved 6%, remodel the debt service at that figure, and put the revised numbers to the board before any borrowing is committed. The first half answers discuss, the second half answers recommend. Neither one covers for the other. You have to actually do both in turn. So the 3 rules side by side, we have 3 verbs and underneath them, honestly, 1 habit, not 3 things to carry, just 1. Because the only question that decides any of this is the one you ask in the last 4 words of an answer. Which verb did I do? Not the verb printed on the paper, the verb your final sentence actually performed. Every time those 2 quietly drift apart, and that's the leak. Same leak whichever verb you were set every time. Okay, the other verbs. Now, these 3 aren't the only verbs the exam sets, but here's the part that saves you a lot of memorizing. You don't drill 50 verbs, most of them are free, these 3 wearing a different coat. And the ones that look new, you just read back to the same question. Does this want me to weigh and hold weight and land, or hand over an action? The only real outlier is a verb that asks you to break something down without ever concluding it, because it never lands a judgment. It can't land the wrong one, so it sits outside the whole problem and it earns a lesson of its own. The one thing to remember, so if you keep one thing from all of this, keep the reason the whole problem exists in the first place. Knowing what a verb means and writing what it wants are two different skills, and the exam only ever pays you for the second one, and that's the purpose of the whole video. Everything I've walked you through is written up on a free page. Every rule, every worked answer, sorted by verbs, so you've got it beside you when you sit down to practice. I can hold your own last sentence against it. The link's just below, and it really is free. You won't be asked for an email or anything else to get in. What the video can't do is the honest limit of all of this. Rules I can hand you, that's what a video is for, but the myths we've spent the whole video on, that's a nasty property. From where you're sitting, your own answer looks done. Nothing in it reads as an error. So you can ask and go back over it 10 times and never see the verb you slipped on, because proofreading only catches the mistakes that look like mistakes. And this one looks like good writing. The only thing that reliably catches it is another person's eyes on the words you actually wrote. So if you want to take it further, there's 3 ways. I have a number of products, starting with the SBL method library. £197 only is the whole method, narrated, every verb and every skill built out like this one. If you want your own answers, read and marked, your real last sentence, not my worked ones, that's a platinum cohort. 497, every answer marked personally inside 48 hours, right through to exam day. And around each sitting, when the pre-scene lands, there's a pre-scene rehearsal, 197, 2 mark mocks on the release pre-scene, whatever you pay for the library, or the rehearsal comes off the cohort if you move up. So no cap on places, no closing date, you join when it's the right time for your sitting. So thanks again for watching my video, and I hope to see you on the next one.